Real stories of rising through hardships, raw truths around life and parenting. What does the universe have in store for us? Self-care to your core. We shine best in our authenticity. Welcome to Rise and Shine with the Mama Jac. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rise and Shine with the Mama Jac. Today we have Kacie. Hi, Kacie. How are you?
I'm amazing. Thank you so much for having
Oh,
me.
it's a pleasure. I'm so excited for this right now. Yay! Okay, so we are going to talk about some inner child healing, the nice childhood work that people are afraid of, but it's very important, right? No one wants to dive that deep, but I promise once you do, there's freedom on the other side. There's freedom on that other side. So Kacie, how are you? Tell it first of all, tell us what you do, and then let's speak on the childhood healing. Inner
Oh, sure. So I think we'll speak on childhood healing and so much other magic because I can already feel this conversation is going to go in so many places.
goosebumps.
And that's me too, because I, like you, are a multi passionate, multi dimensional person with an incredible amount of interests. And I love to fuse them all together as much as I can. My brand is called Luminous Evolution, and I'm here to support the lightworkers, healers, intuitives, and people that are basically here to help through their evolutionary journey to activate their magic and then share their gifts with the world. And I do that in a million different ways.
I love that. I love that. So let's dive right into that.
The inner child healing that I love to talk about is a really multidimensional process where you can time travel and actually become your own spirit guide. You can take yourself back in time and give yourself what you needed in the overwhelming moments or afterwards, and really ripple healing through space and time by creating support for yourself when you were overwhelmed and felt really unsupported. So I teach this technique inside my evolutionary alchemy practitioner program, which is a modality that was channeled through me that alchemizes so much different magic, but it really involves taking people into a sacred space and doing soul journeys where you're working with energy throughout time and space. And when you walk through this process, you can literally rewrite the past and turn something that was traumatic into something that actually makes you a more resilient human.
Mhm. Yeah. So when you're working with people, is it more of a meditation that you do? Do you do hypnotherapy? How do you work it when you're working with people?
In this particular circumstances, it is a guided meditation, but I love bringing people through transformational journeys that can include working in the multidimensional etheric realm with soul journeys, but also it might involve rewiring old subconscious beliefs. It might include, breath, movement, sound, dance, what have you, because sometimes we need a multifaceted approach to move energy. But this particular one I'm speaking of is a meditation that we do that every time I do this work, I bring people into a sacred space and get them connected with their luminous team. That's your guides, your luminous ancestors, the beings of light that are here to help you. And we also make sure people are very aligned with the divine, the highest self, their entire like soul energy and the earth in this beautiful vertical alignment and unplug from all the crap that isn't us. I have people do quite a long preparatory process to make sure the energy can flow and it'll do what it needs to do. We work with the nervous system to bring people out of the energy of overwhelm or stress, which might be like a fight or flight energy,
Mhm.
and into a parasympathetic nervous system of that rest and digest, because that's where you can actually do this work the most effectively. And then we do guide people through a process that uses the imagination, because the imagination is your interface with energy and also your interpreter. And a lot of people, when they were children, were told to write off their imagination. Oh, you're just imagining it. And most people were actually incredibly psychic and as kids, and they were just told by parents or other people that what they were seeing wasn't real. So they shut that down to be part of our consensus reality. And I love to bring people back into the awareness that the imagination is the only way to access the multidimensional.
Mhm.
So we work in these meditative spaces that are very much accessing the subconscious mind through a hypnagogic state. So it's very similar to hypnosis and many other modalities. And then we just work with the intention and following the flow of energy and what's needed. And most of the people that I work with that are here doing this work, most of them are mothers.
Mhm.
And so we travel back in time to be the divine mother, that
Mhm.
energy that was missing at those overwhelming moments or afterwards, and take the inner child, the version of us that was unsupported, that felt all alone and so scared or overwhelmed, and we give them the love that was missing, the support that was missing. And just the loving presence alone does most of the magic. Because any experience that is really difficult, that we are unsupported through, turns into a trauma. But if we have an overwhelming experience and we have the support we need, that's when people just are like, yeah, that made me a strong person, the person I am today.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. That's how I started my childhood work whenever actually my
Mhm.
therapist had one. And I say this all the time. My therapist actually is a Reiki healer too. And I was like, yes, I hit like the best person I could have because anything I could tell her, she doesn't think I'm nuts, right? She's not
Mhm.
gonna commit me when I talk about like, "Oh, I'm talking to my spirit team and, this is happening and that's happening," and she's like, "Oh, yeah." She gets it. She gets all the energy, she gets all the stuff. So it's, like, perfect, right? But, yeah, I remember, for instance, I don't know if you work with certain situations, but the first time I actually ever did a meditation for healing my inner child, I was at a retreat. And I went into it, it was right after my mental breakdown. And during this, it was like she had us send a picture of us when we were little, right? So I sent her
Mhm.
this picture of me like 3 years old holding up this like fish. I think it was a fish. I don't know. My dad was a fisher. He fishes. And so I'm thinking in my head, oh, she's going to come up. Mm-mm. Knocking on my door, first grade self, perfectly, right there. They were like, have no expectations. Who's down the hall? And I saw me. I still have the picture. And then I unwound it and I was like, because I had just gone through this mental breakdown with my therapist. We were like putting puzzle pieces together. And that's like a huge hit that I took at 7 years old. My mom had a mental breakdown. I didn't want her to be alone. I had just had my mental breakdown, okay? And it was because the like straw that broke the camel's back was my son getting the stomach flu, right? My whole life, I've had this
Mhm.
weird paranoia about throwing up, which I know is very normal. A lot of people have it, but it was this fear. But the funny part was, and this is gross to say, but I feel like it's important. The action of it isn't what I was afraid of. There was something subconscious about it, right? It wasn't like, oh, I'm afraid of the actual action. It was something different. I don't even know the word to describe it, but it was something different. So we're putting this together and my son threw up, I had a mental breakdown. And then I do this childhood meditation. My 7-year-old first grade self comes out. The year my mom had a mental breakdown, the year I used to try to make myself throw up to leave so I could be with her at home. I was so
Mhm.
young that nobody wanted to tell me what was going on, right? But I knew. I was intuitive since I was little. This is not a new thing. I just put it together as an adult. So it was that right there is magic in itself, right? I had no expectation going into this. I thought, "Oh, that little girl with the fishy, something happened to her or something random." No, very specifically what I was going through, the biggest lesson I was learning at the time popped up like that. And to me,
Mhm.
I was sold. I was like, "What?" Like, that was my first holy crap moment in spirituality was when I put those
Mhm.
things together, and I'm sure you have a lot of that. So, for you, is it like you're, the person you're working with has something in mind, "Oh, in my childhood, this and this and this happened," and you tap into that? Or is it more of a general thing and then you work out from there? How does it work?
I work with people really in an intuitive way, so oftentimes it's whatever is needed.
Okay.
Sometimes we'll go back just to a general time, like, it could be inner child, but sometimes it's inner teen.
Mhm.
So it could just be like, I was a really angsty 13-year-old and I wasn't feeling safe in my body that was changing because my uncles were being really pervy and creepy. So I just felt uncomfortable. So we can go back to 13-year-old
Yeah.
self. We could also target a very specific time.
Mhm.
And I don't want to tell my client's story
Yeah.
specifically, but I know for myself, I have gone back and I have healed through this being the divine parent, the guardian angel, so many different times where I was feeling unsafe. So there was a time when my mom and dad were fighting right before they got divorced. My dad punched a hole through a door. And so me and my little sister, who was about, I don't know, two, ran into my room and we hid in these pull out little drawers that were underneath our windowsill. And I remember that was probably the only time I've ever felt that scared in my own home. And I showed up in that moment and I gathered the two of us and, just held us and was like, you're going to be okay. And just gave myself what I was missing in that
Have you ever yourself, and this is me speaking from personal experience, gone back
moment.
and in your head you had somebody that was like for instance, if you're in a situation and you get like an overwhelming feeling of calm. You remember this from being a child. It was stressful, but for some reason I felt a calmness over me. And then you go back and you realize it was yourself.
All the time. That is what this kind of multidimensional healing does.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's not even just me, but it could be part of my
Yeah.
team. So my story is that, I actually was always very connected
Mhm.
to spirit and the divine, and I didn't go through the same depth of forgetfulness that a lot of people come here. And I remember very clearly just waiting to be an adult,
Mhm.
right? I was very cognizant that I was putting in my time and that everything would change and that I was going to be okay. Yeah. But I know a lot of it is me going back and healing myself. And a lot of this was catalyzed, as I'm sure most of our healing has been through having children.
Yeah.
And one experience for me was breastfeeding my daughter and that bonding feeling and everything that I didn't know I had missed out on because my mom did not breastfeed me, which is totally fine. Everyone has that choice. But I remember her saying out loud to me, I didn't want some kid sucking at my tit.
Yeah.
I was like, ouch. Some kid. It was me, mom. Like me. I totally understand her availability to that back in the early 80s, a totally different scenario. But when I was nursing my daughter for the very first time, I was like, oh my God, I didn't get to have this experience. And so I went back in time and I nursed my newborns,
Mhm.
right, to give myself that. And I could feel that shifting something so deeply in my nervous system, actually, in this now moment to be like, ah, I've always had the support that I needed. I've always had that love. I've always had that nurturing.
Yeah, I love it, and I love that the process of it, a lot of times people don't see like, for me, I looked back at my life, I was middle class family, parents are still together, what do I have to worry about? What were my traumas? You know what I mean? I don't have anything, and then you start going through it, and this is what I love about just doing a random, inner child healing session with myself is new versions pop up. Like you said, teenage versions. What I'm talking about on the 8th is a car accident I was in when I was 18 years old. I was an
Mm.
adult, so like an adult. We know
Adult.
18 isn't really an adult, but like, you know what I mean, like legally. And then like all this other stuff started popping up. And then you think back and you're like, wow, like the reason that this is happening today is because of this experience I had in the past. And it might have just been a fleeting thing that you're like, oh no, I was fine. In my head, I was fine. But you don't realize the effect it actually did have on you. And it's just insane. Like I said before, the freeing feeling on the other side of knowing that you and your team are there for you to nourish that
Mhm.
inside of you. And you literally start becoming a different person. You're still the same person, right? But you're free. You're freer. You you stop acting as bitter towards certain situations. It's like certain things that trigger you, you're just you don't understand anymore. Like you understand why they did in the moment, but now it's like you're free of that. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So, a question for you because it's been popping up for me. Sometimes in, let's say, 3D situations, right? Because we're still moms, we still have to take our kids to school or do whatever, right? We are still grocery shopping, we're still doing all this. Is it hard for you to understand people sometimes, even people on a spiritual journey? Because I am the person that I've always tried to put myself in somebody else's shoes. That's why I'm so empathetic, right? And I am also an energy reader. So I read the energy. So for me, a lot of times I had to take a step back from a teaching standpoint. I realized I'm not a teacher, right? Because, and I do this because I believe when you're a spiritual person, your words are teaching, right? Anything you say is teaching. When you're channeling, you're teaching. But one on one, right? I get impatient because I see their
Mhm.
energy, what they're feeling. I see the steps that they can take to be free. They're not ready to take them. So for me, I'm like, and I had to take a step back, right? Because my team was like, Jackie, you're on a different journey. Like, this is where you're going. You can be friends, be there for these people. But there's something in your head that you need to put a boundary up because you can't be clouded in your brain. This sounds so I don't know how to say it without it sounding kind of like I'm being an asshole, but I can't be so clouded and be taken over by other people's emotions so much that I'm forgetting about my path, right? Because
Mhm.
that's what was happening. It was clouding my vision to where I needed to go that I think is very super important that I'm going to change the world with, you know? And I know people here change the world and they're like, "Oh, so high and mighty." No, 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 no. One smile to a stranger walking down the street can change the world. That's what people don't realize, right? Um,
Mhm.
so do you ever feel like that? And how do I navigate it? I guess I need a little bit of spiritual advice on this. How do I just refocus? Like, 'cause I don't wanna give up that empathy, right? It's hard when especially when you're an energy reader and you know they need help and it's but they're not there. They're not there. You can also feel that they're not there. And then I'm like, "Well, I got my stuff to do. I got a podcast. I'm doing a nonprofit. I'm doing this. I'm doing that." So it's like, "Okay, Jackie, one thing at a time."
I have a lot to say about this. I absolutely get you. So let me share a couple things because I work specifically with lightworkers, healers, intuitives like yourself, and this is a very common issue.
Okay.
A lot of people want to help so badly that we just want to help everybody and we get excited about our knowledge and we want to share and we want to help. And I had to go through the process. So this was about over a decade ago for me where it really started clicking in. Help that's not wanted is not helpful.
Mhm.
And I had to really learn to separate the work that I do and save it for the people that were asking for it, that were paying me for it, that are excited about it, that come to me specifically for it. And for the rest of the time, my job is not to do anything but be an example of what is possible. So I've had this with family members. I've had this with sisters where I've gotten so excited about my learning and be like, if you just learned this too, you would be so much happier. And if people aren't ready for it, it is almost like an assault to them.
Yeah.
But it's also really disempowering when you think about it to say that somebody else needs to do it your way,
Yeah.
right? Or they need to do it now.
Yeah.
So a big part of what I also work with people, and again, so many of my clients are moms, it's thinking about the fact that your kids have to have their journey, and you can guide them, but you can't take away the mistakes. You can't take away the times where they're going to fall on their face and get it wrong and be sad, because if you do, they're going to wind up being like little saplings that break in a storm as opposed to like the mighty oak.
Yeah.
They have to go through their own crap.
Mhm.
And when we come in on our uh, you know, horse like a knight in shining armor, like, I will save you. First off, if they don't want it, they're like, what do you mean save me? I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right. But it's actually our desire to help turned up too high, making us go into that savior martyr kind of complex. Right. Whereas I want people to have the emotional and spiritual maturity to go, I'll hold space for you. And I trust that you are going to do amazing things on your journey, even if you get it wrong, even if you have pain. I'm going to trust that this is your path and this is your journey, and I'm here when you're ready. Energetically, I also have something that I would love to share with you, and it's actually a free gift that I have for everybody watching, and it's a technique called the sparkle field. And this is perfect for empaths who feel other people's feelings and get stuck in your body, and it winds up being unintentional energy vampiring,
Mhm.
right? Because they're latching on to your light and siphoning it for their own life force because they can't create it. It's called the sparkle field. This is instead of using shields, which actually create a disconnect between you and the world and you and the divine and place you into this energy of I'm unsafe and I need to be protected.
Mhm.
The sparkle field is a similar process, and I walk people through it inside the free Frequency Upgrade Academy that I have, where we amplify our frequency, our vibration, not from our own energy, but getting really connected to the divine and earth energies,
Mhm.
and then basically making our field vibrate so fast that no ick can stick.
Mhm.
Right? And it is a really easy to do process that has let people who are empaths who usually get overwhelmed in crowds and grocery stores and feel and those small talk conversations at a school pickup or something feel like, oh wow, I can go out and interact in public and I'm no longer basically at the mercy of other people's energy. It brings back your sovereignty. And you can program the field to offer that kind of energy to anybody that wants it, but nobody can vampire you because you're giving it freely and it's coming from the overflow.
Mhm. I love that because I always say, "You don't fill your cup, you overflow it." You're not pouring from a
Exactly.
full cup, you're overflowing into other people. Energetically, that's where you wanna be. You wanna be able to overflow. If you can't overflow, you shouldn't be using your energy towards other things like that because you never wanna be in that state of lack, I guess you could say, like,
Yeah.
maybe, but that was great advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's really helpful. And it's just a quick energy hygiene
Mhm.
practice that you can do, anytime. And once you've walked through it once, which takes about 20 minutes, you can do it in two.
Yeah. Yeah, because I myself, before any meditation I do, I always ground myself and lift myself, right? Like I'm feeling the earth. I ground into the core of the earth and then it goes up through me into source energy, right?
Mhm.
So I'm all about that equal flow, equal flow.
Mhm.
It's just the pushing it out now, right? That's what I need to, I guess, get better
Mhm.
at. So that's great advice. That's great advice because I've realized my energy will boot people out sometimes now. It's weird.
Mhm.
Literally yesterday, I was in a situation with this person that I guess betrayal came from, and I could not be in the same area as them. Energetically, I said it felt like when you're trying to stick two of the same sides of a magnet together. It was like, vroom,
Mhm.
vroom, vroom, like I could not. And I was like, why? And then I got angry because I was like, "Ooh, this person's in my space. Get them out of I don't know if it was just the memory of what they did to me or whatever, but I knew I didn't get over it at that point, right? Because I was like, if I'm still really bothered by this person, there's still lessons here for me to learn. Jackie, get out your pen and paper because you need to go back to school at this point, and on it, we are always healing, right? But this booted me in the butt yesterday. And I was just like, okay, Jack, you don't really get mad about things anymore. And she was able to light you on fire. Holy crap. Let's take a step back and look at this because that betrayal, there's something deeper than her in there. That started before her. And that's where the child stuff comes in, right? Where, when I was younger, did I feel so betrayed? And immediately it came
Mhm,
to my head. I knew exactly where it was coming from. So now it's just doing the proper techniques of, for me, it's journaling and meditating and feeling through those feelings, through
mhm,
them, and then also accepting the counterpart, right? Which loyalty. I have a lot of loyalty in people now, and
mhm,
that I didn't have before, just from being your authentic self. I feel like you bring in loyal people when you're loyal in return, right? Not saying there won't be the other people coming in, but you're able to see that and be like, okay, this is a relationship that I have that I can just have this surface level relationship with this person. These are the people that are my people, that understand me to my soul, that we see each other. Even if we're going through a bad time, we see that true, authentic person inside. These are the people that can tell me, Jackie, what the hell are you doing to yourself right now? And I'm not like, I don't get defensive anyways because I'm in a schooling type of mentality, right? I try not to get defensive. I'm like, what lesson is in this? I'm always looking for the lessons. There's a lesson in why this is happening in my life right now. So let's just accept it and see how much I can learn from this experience. And that was hard to forward to
mm.
that. That was really hard to go from controlling to learning, right? Um, And our control comes out as parents. Of course it does. But I try to keep it at bay, at bay. So, another question to you as far as parenting is concerned, right? Your kids in
Mhm,
control, right? You always want to control. You said earlier, and I totally agree with you, they have to make their mistakes. I was just talking to my husband about something very similar with one of my kids this morning. They have to make their own mistakes as much as we want to keep them in this cocoon. It's like, you got to let them do it and then just be their stone, be their person, be open so they know
mhm,
that they can come to you. Even as an energy, my kids are young. I'm still in their energy field, right? I think it's till 7 years old before it kind of starts
mhm,
to dwindle away. So, I feel it, right? And I'm like, "My baby." Automatically, I wanna do that, but then it's like, "Jackie, no, he has to learn. He has to build up that resiliency. And if you just jump in there every time." So I just go to talking about feelings. 100%. That's just always my go-to when my kid is mad, sad, even happy, because we don't want to just do the mad and sad, right? We need to highlight happy and fun times and stuff like that. What would you suggest to parents that are looking at their kids that just want to take the pain away? How do you deal with that as a parent inside yourself?
mm. It depends on the age of the kid and what's going
Mhm,
on. I have an 8-year-old, so just moving out of that energy where I am their nervous system and their auric field, but I will always still be available to literally physically hold and hug and be that co-regulator. I am so happy to do that, even if she's, 37.
mhm,
It's going to be available. But we do need to let them have their feelings. And the only way that I can navigate that easily as someone who is also very empathic and does not want to see her in that pain or what have you is by being in my own most aligned energy. So if I am tired, cranky, dysregulated, stressed, overwhelmed, it's really hard for me to hold space and be clean and clear with it and be okay. when there's a meltdown, when there's feelings, right? And just be the calm rock. So I have to get my own emotional crap
Yeah.
together to be able to. I think that's really the main thing. And then if you are in your aligned, calm centered space, it's, I think, just holding space and being the guiding light and being the example of what that calm can feel like for them to talk about it instead of being in a ping pong kind of getting all up in each other's space. Because I know if I'm dysregulated, if my kid is like mad and sad about something, and I'll be like, well, why don't you just, right?
Yeah.
Like I'll blow up back. So it's really about my energy, I
Mm.
guess.
Yeah. See, and that's where me and my husband differ because I think because I feel them, right? And I'm always my whole life, from the time I was 7, I've felt the need to be the calm, the need to be the one
Mhm,
that cracks the jokes when people are sad to make them smile, the need to be that energy that comes in to help. And
mhm,
as an adult, I realize where that needs to come and go. But it's so ingrained in my head from the time I was 7, like I said, and possibly
mhm,
earlier. I My
mhm,
therapist, I was joking because she knows what I do and, how I am. She's like, "I believe that your trauma probably started earlier than you remember." She's like, "I have a challenge for you, Jackie." And I was like, "Fuck, challenge coming from a Reiki healer, like, dang it." And she's like, "I want you to do an inner child work, but I want you to try to reach even younger than you can remember. And that doesn't
mhm,
mean you have to remember. That just means holding that little girl because I think this started before you can remember. I think that's why your mental
mhm,
breakdown came. I think because when we parent, as our kids go through everything, we're triggered back to when we were that age, right? You can't help it.
mhm,
It's literally what happens. People say parenting, especially now, right? Because I feel like we're in this generation of very present parents. There's a lot of very present parents. Now, there are still parents, and I don't want to dog on our parents, right? A lot of them knew what they knew and they tried their best. My mom worked her ass off all the time. My dad worked his off all the time. They did what they could with what they knew, and how they could with their
mhm,
feelings. It's not like now, oh, getting in touch with everything. That's not how it was in the 80s, right? In the 90s.
mhm,
Reparenting yourself through everything that goes on with your kids is a whole other spiritual thing, a whole other, not even spiritual, because people that aren't spiritual go through it and I don't think they
mhm,
realize the anger that comes out, the frustration that comes out in them is not with their child. It's probably with something that happened to them in the past. And that is what is causing it. It is trauma from the past. And trauma to me was a very difficult word to use for a long time because my car accident I was in where I almost died, I considered that trauma, right? But trauma can just be something that changes your way of thinking, that destruct your like path, right? Like all of a sudden you're
mhm,
going, 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 and then boom, you're up against the wall and you have to make this quick choice, or you feel like it shattered your world. And so people don't realize that the smallest things get brought back up. And the reason you're yelling at your kid is probably because of something that happened to you that you need to heal. How do you feel about that
mhm.
statement?
I mean, yeah, anything that overwhelms us that we don't have enough support through, that we can't complete the emotional circuit
Mhm.
with. Because most kids nowadays, a lot of them are getting this amazing emotional like vocabulary, and most of the kids I know that are 7, 8 years old have more emotional maturity and awareness than I did when I was 30, which is amazing because they are being taught so much more. But most of us aren't taught to feel our feelings. Most of the people in our generation were told it was too much, like suck it
Yeah.
up, quit crying. So we don't know how to let an emotion flow through us. So it gets stuck in us. And then it gets binged or dinged whenever we have a similar situation or we're just overwhelmed. So basically, we have to feel the feelings to completion, and we have to sometimes have our nervous system complete a cycle. When it's been in like a fight or flight response, we have to complete the circuit and come back into that rest and digest. So It's the physical body, it's the nervous system, it's the emotions, it's the beliefs that get laid down because of it. And we need to work with all of those levels and layers in order to clear them out so we can actually respond from now instead of the
Yeah.
past.
People need to hear this. People need to
Hmm.
hear this. Parents, I know this is a spiritual mama episode, but this goes beyond spirituality. That's why I felt so pushed to put the spirituality aspect out there too, because it is something that every person goes through. Like, that's a parent. And
Hmm.
there is such there's a path to get through that. You don't have to be angry all the time. The overwhelm comes. We can't help that. But there are ways to calm yourself before it gets too bad and you can't control it. And whether that's through healing yourself, earplugs, taking a breath, realigning yourself, like you said. If you don't believe in realignment, prayer, whatever you do for your religious, I always say, like, you got a religion, you're here to help, you're here to spread love. I'm right there with you, girl, boy, dude, them, whoever, like, I'm right there with you. So, oh man, I love this. I love this so much.
Yeah. And I think it's important that people know that there's two parts. We have to go back and do the healing of the old stuff, but then we also need to regularly maintain our ability to keep our crap together, right? Our poop in a group. And so there's the going in and doing the excavation and the healing and the purification. And then there's the actually setting your life up so that you are not overwhelmed all the
Mhm.
time. And I know that is super difficult. Our culture does not support people, especially women, in feeling very supported and like they can take time for themselves. But it's the most essential thing, right? If you are stressed out and overwhelmed, you are going to spew that all over your children and anyone that encounters you. And I don't know many relaxed women who feel like they've got enough time to actually devote to that self care. And it is the most important thing to be able to not traumatize your own children through your reactions. And I've been there. I have been, I mean, gosh, when my kid was about 2 or 3, my husband has MS. He was too sick to work for a year. We lived without any family around. I ran my own business, so it was all on me. And prior to having a kid, I've been on this journey for a long time. I was good with self care. I took care of myself. I got enough sleep. I got enough
Mhm.
exercise. But as the responsibilities piled on me, I started putting myself last and everyone else first. And my patience were thinner and thinner. And I was stressed out and not very nice sometimes. I wasn't showing up as the best version of me, and I didn't want that. And thank God I started studying belief repatterning, and I had these mentors and guides who would challenge me like, can you give yourself the first 10 minutes of the day
Mhm.
to prove to yourself that you are worthy and you're taking care of yourself? And I went, I'm a mom. I have a business. I can't do that. Who do you know what my life is about? Excuses, excuses, excuses. It was all programming. It had nothing to do with reality. I could wake up 10 minutes earlier. I could give that to myself. And the evolution that I've had over the last 5 or 6 years in that has been so dramatic that now I'm the biggest proponent of making sure that I get enough time to move, to meditate, to take care of my needs first. Or, not necessarily first, but,
It needs to
over the
happen.
course of
Yeah.
the day so that I can show up as the best version of me. And it's so much easier because I have one kid. I have a husband who is able to work now, able to be partners. He's healed so much. I have, just the ability to work for myself. So I have also changed the circumstances, and my circumstances have changed when you've got, three under three, or like even you just have a toddler, like it's intense.
Mhm.
So you just have to survive until you can make the space, but you have to start consciously setting the intention to shift that, to make the space, to get the support, or it will drive you crazy
Yeah.
and you're going to be doing all of the uh, you know, wounding to your kids that happen to you in different ways, right? If you want to do your ancestral and generational curse breaking and show up differently to your parents, you have to have the support that you need to be the version of yourself that can do all of that.
It was interesting. Early on in my journey, I had a guide. I still have him. And it was the soul of my older brother who passed away, and he passed away little, 8 days old, right? And I believe he's part of my soul family, right? I decided I was with him before I came down, and he's like, "Go. Like, this is your turn. I gave them their
Mhm.
lesson. Now you're in their life to do this." We chose our parents together, but we never physically met, right? Because he would have been 8 years older than me. So I wasn't here whenever he was born or anything like that. And I remember when I first started hearing things, I was talking to him, in meditation, and I would go to this place and he would meet me, and some of my other guides at the time would meet me. And I was like, okay, well, I keep getting people I know coming to me, right? And I was a little skeptic of that because I was like, am I just remembering things from what I know from them instead of actually channeling people? So I'm in this meditation and I told him, I was like, let's start bringing other things in. Like, let's start bringing other things in. And I shit you not. So my safe space and my meditation, I have my little safe space, and then there's the beach, right? I'm very connected to the beach and the ocean. Very, very, very. That's where my awakening happened. Every year I go back to this retreat. It's like I'm raised another level, right? So we go to the beach, and it is that beach, right, that I see in my meditation. And my whole deceased fucking family was there. And I looked at him and I was like, literally in my meditation, I was like, I told you other people. And he's like, they had to say hi first. And I'm not joking. It was every single person that has passed away was sitting around this little. I had a fire that I would sit out with my guides. They would tell me, they would show me stuff. Where am I at? Am I meant to just be today? Am I meant to learn a lesson today? What are you going to teach me today? And that coffee moment was spent with a family freaking reunion, and my grandfather and grandmother were there. Now, energy still wasn't there with them, right? I was able to go up to my grandfather and be like, "I understand. I understand why you were the way you are. And I'm sending you love even on the other side. And I know you don't like you're seeing this from a different perspective now, but I had to forgive him on that side to be able to deal with what happened here, right? My grandmother was another story. She was silent, she was straight faced, and I could not give her that forgiveness at that moment. Now, everyone else was just a family reunion. I was hugging all of my relatives. Like, imagine that. Like, people you haven't seen. And my mom thought I was crazy when I told her this. She was like, "You're making this up in your head." And I was like, "Okay." And then I started doing mediumship for other people. It started, right? Things started coming through. And I was like, okay, and I don't do it very often. I don't even love to call myself a medium because it comes when it comes. I don't control it. I don't call these people to come to me. If they come to me, cool. I'm here. I'm here for it. If you're open to receive a message, I'm going to relay whatever I'm seeing, feeling, and that's that. But I'm not going to sit here and try to summon somebody that doesn't want to talk at that point, right? I give my energy reads and then people will pop up. But I just thought it was hilarious that my brother, who I think is a big part of my soul team, was like, I couldn't help it. Here's your family. Say hi to everybody before you take this journey with everybody else. This is your comfort. And I was like, what the hell is going on in my head right now? And I got up and I had the biggest smile on my face, but I did think it was interesting that that interaction with my grandmother on my father's side, I still couldn't. I still couldn't at that moment. It was intense.
There is a book that I think every human should read, and especially moms, and they can read it to their kids. It's called The Little Soul and the Sun. Have you heard of it by Neil Donald Walsh?
No.
I cannot recommend it
I'll
enough.
pin a link, an Amazon link to it.
Yeah, it is also something you can just watch a YouTube video of someone reading if you don't want to buy the book. But Neil Donald Walsh wrote Conversations with God.
Mhm.
Really influential spiritual book. It's amazing if you haven't read that. But this is a children's book that explains how all of this works, and it will bring you all of the codes you need for the forgiveness for those family members. It is so masterful, and it explains it all in better detail than I possibly could in the time that we have.
Yes. I mean, I know that was a really long story. I'm sorry. I felt the need to share it. I don't know why. And I just go with it. So, I w
Just because I could then tell you about the book, and then someone listening to this is going to go and they're going to read the book. Maybe we can put the link in the show notes
Mhm.
as well, and it's going to change somebody's life.
Yeah. It's God, it's such a cool journey to be on, especially when you're on the side of, like, and I don't know, do you do mediumship?
I don't advertise it, but often when I'm in my one-on-one sessions, people
Pop in.
will come
Yeah.
through.
That's how I am too. I'm not like, "Oh, I'm a medium," because, like I said, I don't I honestly, maybe it's just where I'm at in my spirituality right now. I don't believe in summoning a spirit that I feel like if they want to come through, they're going to come through. It's not something that I should be like, "Hey, hey, where are you? Like, we need to hear from you right now," you know? I don't
I
wanna
hear
be
that,
that
and
person.
it's the same, yeah, same with mediumship, and I am psychic AF. I could give you the best psychic reading of your life, but I don't do that because I would rather empower people to open their own psychic senses and get their own experiences going. That's my favorite.
Yeah, and that's always what happens in the readings, right? I read somebody's energy, and it might be shit at that time. Honestly, I tell everybody, I'm like, listen, you can't hide from my readings. Okay. So I'm warning you, we're on a public platform right now. If you want me to stop, tell me to stop. We can continue this privately. But I don't just leave them in that shit, right? There's always guidance that comes after from my guides, from their guides, whoever it's coming from, right? And I will never leave people just with, yeah, you're going through this, that, and that, and it's shitty right now, but I see you. Like, sometimes all they need is I see you. But sometimes they need that little push. Like, I can't even think of a for instance right now. There's something personal that comes to you from them, and it sparkles, right? It's almost like something you see, like, intuitively or something that means a lot to them, and you go off of that, and that's where the hope comes from in the message. Does that make sense to you?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I never leave people with just the that's why I don't love, like, sometimes tarot readings can feel harsh to me with the way certain people do it. I feel like there needs to be a closing with the opening. There needs to be help at the other end. There should never just be a, this is what I see and that's that. It should be a, okay, well, this is what can happen. And this is your next step to maybe think about, right? You don't have to do it.
Mhm.
Let's think about these things and start to open your mind in this area a little more because I feel like if you open your mind over here, there's going to be ideas that are going to be a little more freeing for you. And you're going to realize certain things that maybe your mind hasn't let you realize yet, you know? I just got into a really soft space. You can tell I really got into my heart center with that last part. What would you like to get out there? What would you like to get out there? Just message. We know your business, right? So we're going to highlight all of that in the show notes and everything.
So, for the spiritual parents out there, I need you to know you are doing an amazing job and no one's ever done this before. So, let's give ourselves so much grace, so much compassion to be doing your spiritual work, your healing and clearing work, your ascension work, your personal evolution while you're breaking generational curses, while you are parenting your kids in the most intense time in history, full of unprecedented events, while there's less support and so much more pressure, etc., etc. maybe you're also building a business and getting your butt kicked with your entrepreneurship journey as well. Like, and you have other responsibilities. You're doing an amazing job. And it sounds so easy and simple to say, but I know this is hard in reality. The more you can focus on clearing and cleaning your energy up and then being in that alignment with your team, with your guides, with source, and all of that, the more your life will flow. And I know it's hard to prioritize that time. And also, when you do, you actually create more time for everything else because you become so much more efficient and effective. So, highly recommend. I do have my free Frequency Upgrade Academy where I share some of my favorite tools to work with this, that also goes into how to be more connected, how to be more aligned, how your nervous system has to do with it, and the sparkle field activation that I talk about that you can use. And you can use these techniques. It's in simple, quick lessons. The whole thing is under an hour or about an hour, and it will give you some tools that you can apply right away to amplify your magic so that you can show up as the best parent that you can be.
Mhm. I love that. Thank you so much.
Oh my
Thank you so much
goodness.
for
You're so
being here.
welcome. It's been a delightful conversation.
Yes. Thank you for listening to another episode of Rise and Shine with the Mama Jac, where we deep dive into the real, raw, truthful world of parenthood, mental health, wellness, and spirituality. Remember, my loves, it's okay to take a moment for yourself, to breathe, to laugh, and embrace the beautiful messiness of life. Let's keep rising out of our shadows, shining our light, nurturing our souls, and spread love like confetti. Until next time, stay shamelessly authentic. Love, the Mama Jac. For more info and socials, go to shamelesslyauthenticproductions.com.